If you're watching Game 1 of the Stanley Cup Finals between the Edmonton Oilers and the Florida Panthers, you probably saw this video of Wayne Gretzky saying that the best defensive forward he has ever played against was number 19 for the New York Islanders, Bryan Trottier. Now, if you didn't see that video or hear about this, here's the video. You're welcome.
Go back to your first two cup appearances. You're up against Bryan Trottier. McDavid, it's against Barkov. So you lived it. What did you learn those first 2 years?
I just said to my wife sitting there during the first period, I said, number 16 is the best defensive hockey player I've seen since Bryan Trottier. Wow. And I got Bryan Trottier 4 games, and what did I get? No goals. And what did we get? No cup.
Now, let's just substantiate that a little bit. Let's define the period of time that we're looking at and really kind of suss out what Wayne Gretzky was talking about. Put some numbers to the quote, if you will. Now, we know that there's some overlap here between when Bryan Trottier played and when Wayne Gretzky played, quite a bit of overlap. But we're only going to focus on between 1979-80 through 1987-88, because that's really when Bryan Trottier was at his peak. It kind of fell off after that. He shortly left the Islanders and joined the Pittsburgh Penguins, where he won another 2 Stanley Cups like a friggin' legend. But we're only focused about that time. And we're only going to look at playoff games. Now, you might ask why. There's still a lot of regular season games there, Mitch. And that's true. But the context of Wayne Gretzky's comments were made in the context of the playoffs. And really specifically the Stanley Cup Finals, which they, being the Islanders and Edmonton Oilers, have quite a bit of history in. But that'll serve as context as far as what we're looking at here. So we're looking at from 79 through 1988. The playoff games played between the New York Islanders and the Edmonton Oilers, played by where Wayne Gretzky specifically played. Now, if I flip the screen here, you see that Wayne Gretzky played through 1979-80 through 87-88 against the New York Islanders. He played 15 games, scoring 21 points. Now, right away, you're like, that doesn't sound like some insanely good defensive play there, Mitch. That's well over a point per game. Even in the 80s, that's pretty damn good. True. You're absolutely right. 21 points in 15 games is a lot. But let's boil down that context here just a little bit further. Now, it's only 15 games, so it's not a whole lot, but it really comes down to 4 specific games, really 6, if you break it out or you zoom out a little bit more. But it's really 4 games in specific that Wayne Gretzky was referencing here. Now, if you look at his career playoffs, and I'm going to flip the screen here again, you look at Wayne Gretzky's career playoffs. This is his hockey reference page and his game-by-game stats through his Stanley Cup playoff career. There's that first series against the New York Islanders in 1981, where through 6 games, he's scoring at least a point per game. A goal, an assist, hat trick there, and 2 assists. The Islanders eventually take them out, and then so 2 and then 1 again there. The Islanders take them out in 6 games where they go on and, they do their gosh darn thing. We're well aware of that. It's the next year where Wayne Gretzky generates that kind of context in terms of the number 1 defensive player he's ever played against. In the Stanley Cup Finals of 1983, they met yet again, and Wayne Gretzky was invisible. In those 4 games, he did not score a goal. As he said in the broadcast, in the video that I shared, he said he didn't score a goal. There it is. Does not score a goal. Doesn't even put up a point in the first game. And then is barely a factor for Wayne Gretzky standards. I get he's got 2 assists and then 2 more in the next 2 games. I get it. He still has 4 points in 3 games. But in terms of Wayne Gretzky standards, that's invisible. And clearly it didn't help. The Oilers got swept. Right? In 4 games, the Islanders took them out to win their 4th straight Stanley Cup. And if you go back to remember some of the other videos that Wayne Gretzky has, or comments that Wayne Gretzky has made on camera, speaking about the inspiration to go and win the Stanley Cup the very next year, it's those New York Islanders in 1983, where they were expecting, they be the Oilers, expecting the Islanders would be jubilant, having this huge party in the dressing room. And he remembers walking by these guys just with ice packs everywhere. They paid the ultimate price in hockey terms to win that Stanley Cup. And he's like, that's what we've got to do the next years and why these guys are where they are. And specifically when it comes to Bryan Trottier. But I mentioned 6 games, not just these 4 games. because these teams met yet again in the Stanley Cup Finals, as you're probably well aware, the very next year. So let's go back to the stats here. So remember those 4 games. In 4 straight games in the 1983 Stanley Cup Finals, Wayne Gretzky does not score a goal and only has 4 points in 4 games. It's a point per game, but still that's really bad for Wayne Gretzky, which is just insane. So if we scroll down to the 1984 Stanley Cup Finals, in the first 2 games of that series, again, Wayne Gretzky not only doesn't score, but doesn't put up a point. Bryan Trottier and the Islanders keep him off the score sheet entirely. So at this point, the Islanders and the Edmonton Oilers have played 6 games, and Wayne Gretzky has been held off of the score sheet 3 times. Not just in terms of goals, just in terms of points at all. 3 games out of 6, 50% of the games that he played against the Islanders, he didn't put up a gosh darn point because of Bryan Trottier. And in those 6 games, he puts up only 4 points. That's horrendous for Wayne Gretzky. Really, really bad stuff thanks to Bryan Trottier. Now, of course, going back to the board here, like Wayne Gretzky would then douche the gosh darn thing, putting up 7 points over the next 3 games, and the Edmonton Oilers would win their Stanley Cup in 5 games over the New York Islanders. But the Islanders were dead tired, man. Like, you know, I'm not going to take anything away from the Edmonton Oilers. They deserved it. They played really well. Wayne Gretzky learned something. But this is just substantiating what Wayne Gretzky said in an Islander context here. Is like when you look at what Bryan Trottier and the New York Islanders were able to do against the greatest player to ever play the game, it is GOAT level stuff. And he's absolutely right, obviously, to say that Bryan Trottier was the best defensive player he's ever seen. And that he's putting Sasha Barkov in that context is some mighty high praise for Sasha Barkov.